The wind howled across the empty desert of a dying world. Broken stones and the remains of ancient walls stood like silent guards. The sun was pale, weak, almost as if it had given up hope on this land. A lone human traveler walked through the ruins. His boots crushed the dust with each step. His cloak was old but strong, made for long journeys. His name was Daniel, a simple trader moving between colonies. He was tired, carrying only a small bag of supplies and a plasma knife at his belt. Daniel was used to silence. He liked traveling alone because silence meant safety, but on this day silence ended. From behind a broken wall came the sound of footsteps. Light, unsteady, almost stumbling. Daniel stopped, his hand moving close to his weapon. Out of the shadows, a figure appeared. It was a woman. Not human. Her skin was pale silver, glowing faintly under the weak sunlight. Strange markings covered her face and neck, patterns like living tattoos. Her hair was long, dark, tangled from dust and hunger. She wore clothing that was torn and dirty, once elegant but now ruined. In her arms she carried a small child. The child looked even weaker, his little head resting against her shoulder. His eyes opened slowly, wide and alien, shining a soft blue glow. The woman staggered closer, almost falling, but she kept walking until she stood before Daniel. Daniel took a step back. He had seen aliens before, but this one was different. There was desperation in her eyes, a kind of pain that struck deeper than words. She looked straight into his eyes and whispered, her voice shaking but clear. "Take me and my child as your concubine." "Just don't leave us here," Daniel froze. The words made no sense. Concubine? What kind of request was this? His mind raced. She was trembling, her arms tightening around her child as if protecting him from an invisible enemy. "Wait," Daniel said slowly, his voice calm but firm. "What do you mean? Why would you say something like that?" The alien woman dropped to her knees in the dust. She bowed her head low, almost touching the ground, holding her child close to her chest. "I have no choice," she whispered. "If you leave us, we will die. If others find us, they will take us back. Please, I beg you, take us. Even as slaves, even as less than human. Just don't let them take my child." Daniel's heart pounded. He had seen refugees, beggars, and broken souls before, but never like this. Never with such a strange and shocking plea. The child stirred in her arms. His small hand reached out, brushing Daniel's boot. His glowing eyes blinked up at him with innocent confusion. "Are you my new father?" the child asked softly. His voice was weak, almost fading, but it struck Daniel harder than any weapon. Daniel stepped back again, struggling to understand. This woman was an alien, and she was offering herself, offering her life and her child in exchange for safety. Why? What kind of danger hunted her so badly that she would throw away her pride? Daniel scanned the horizon. The ruins were quiet, but the air felt heavy. There was something out there, something watching. He looked back down at the woman. Her body shook with exhaustion, yet her eyes stayed locked on him. Silver tears slid down her face, glowing faintly in the dim light. She was ready to give up everything, her dignity, her freedom, even her identity, just to save the child in her arms. Daniel knelt down slowly, still cautious. "Listen," he said firmly. "I am not here to own anyone. I don't need concubines. But I need to know, who is chasing you? What danger are you running from?" The woman bit her lip, fear flashing across her face. She opened her mouth to speak, but before words came, a distant sound echoed through the ruins. A deep metallic howl. Daniel's blood went cold. The child clung to his mother tighter, and she pressed her face into his small head as if to hide him. "They are here," she whispered. "They will not stop." Daniel stood quickly, his hand gripping the hilt of his plasma knife. He scanned the broken walls again, eyes narrowing. The ruins suddenly felt smaller, more dangerous. Shadows stretched longer, as if something was moving among them. The alien woman lifted her head, her face full of despair but also a kind of fierce determination. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking. "If you leave us now, my child will not survive. I will not survive. Take us, even if it means shame for me. Protect him." Daniel's breath came slow and heavy. He had not planned for this. He was just a traveler, a trader, not a hero. Yet now in front of him knelt a woman who was ready to sacrifice herself. All for the small, glowing-eyed child in her arms. For the first time in many years, Daniel felt a weight on his chest. It was not fear. It was something else. Something heavy, something human. The distant howl grew louder, Stones shook from the old walls. Shadows moved. Daniel looked down at the woman and her child one last time. And in that moment, he knew he could not walk away. Daniel's breath came heavy as the sound of the metallic howl echoed again through the ruins. The alien woman clutched her child tighter, her silver tears glowing faintly in the dim light. She had asked him for something shocking, something no man had ever heard before. She had begged to be taken as his concubine, only so her child could survive. Daniel stood tall, his hand still gripping the hilt of his plasma knife. His eyes moved across the broken stones, scanning for movement. Nothing, only the endless desert wind. Yet the sound had been real. Something dangerous was out there, something hunting them. He looked down at the woman. She trembled, but it was not from weakness alone. It was fear. Deep, paralyzing fear. Daniel lowered his voice, calm but firm. "What are you running from? Who are they?" The woman shook her head quickly, as if even speaking the truth might bring danger closer. "You do not understand," she whispered. "If they find us, there will be no mercy. They will take him and they will kill me. They always do." The child lifted his head from her shoulder. His glowing blue eyes stared at Daniel, wide with innocence but touched by fear. "Mother, will they come again?" The woman kissed his forehead, trying to steady her voice. "Not if we stay hidden. Not if this human protects us." Daniel frowned. He didn't like being dragged into other people's wars. He was a traveler, not a soldier. Yet something in the way she clung to her child made his chest tighten. "Tell me," Daniel said firmly. "I need to know what I'm facing." For a long moment, the woman stayed silent. Then slowly she looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with pain. "They are slavers," she said finally. "Hunters of my kind. They believe my people are only fit to serve, or to die." Daniel's jaw tightened. He had heard rumors before, whispers of alien species being captured and sold like animals. But seeing it here in front of him with this woman and child, it was no longer just a rumor. "Why ask me to take you as a concubine?" Daniel pressed. "Why not simply ask for help?" The woman's lips trembled. "Because help is never free. My kind has learned this truth. Many humans will only protect us if we give something in return. A body, a life, a promise of obedience. I thought, if I offered myself, you might not walk away." Daniel stared at her, his heart twisting. The idea that she had to beg in such a way filled him with anger. Not at her, but at the world that had broken her spirit. "You don't need to offer yourself," Daniel said firmly. "I am not that kind of man." For the first time, the woman's eyes widened with surprise. Her voice shook. "Then, why would you help me?" Daniel looked at the child, who was still holding on to his mother with small, shaking arms. "Because no child should grow up in chains," he said quietly. The woman blinked, her silver tears flowing faster. "You would protect us?" Without asking for anything. Before Daniel could answer, the metallic howl returned. Louder. Closer. The woman gasped and pulled the child close, hiding his face against her chest. "They are near," she whispered. Daniel's body tensed. He stepped forward, placing himself between them and the shadows of the ruins. "Stay behind me," he said. From the distance came movement. Shapes flickered between the broken walls. Tall, armored figures with glowing red eyes. Their footsteps were heavy, metallic like machines mixed with flesh. The woman's breathing grew sharp. "It is them," she said. "The hunters. They have found us." Daniel narrowed his eyes. He had seen mercenaries before, but these were different. They moved like predators, slow and confident, as if they already owned their prey. One of the hunters raised a long weapon, its red sight locking on the woman. A mechanical voice echoed across the ruins. "Return the slave. She belongs to us." The woman's body shook violently and she fell to her knees again. Her arms tightened around her child, her voice breaking into sobs. "No, please, not again." Daniel's grip on his plasma knife tightened. His instinct screamed at him to leave, to escape before it was too late. But something stronger kept him rooted. The sound of the child's small voice echoed in his head. "Are you my new father?" Daniel clenched his jaw. He could not walk away. Not now. He stepped forward, his voice cold and sharp. "She doesn't belong to you." "Not anymore." The hunters paused, their glowing red eyes fixing on him. Silence fell over the ruins, heavy and dangerous. Then the leader's mechanical voice replied, "Then you have chosen death, human." The sound of weapons charging filled the air. Energy hummed, sparks glowing red in the shadows. The woman cried out, holding her child tightly as if preparing for the end. But Daniel did not move back. He raised his plasma knife, his heart steady despite the odds. The hunters advanced. The air grew heavy with tension, with fear, with the promise of blood. And in that final moment, as the enemy closed in, Daniel whispered under his breath, "Let them come." The ruins shook with the sound of charging weapons. Red sparks lit the broken walls as the hunters stepped closer. Their glowing eyes fixed on Daniel, cold and merciless. The alien woman held her child close, her face pale with terror. Her lips moved in silent prayer, as if every breath might be her last. Daniel's hand tightened around his plasma knife. He had fought before, bandits, raiders, smugglers. But these hunters were different. They were built for killing. The first one moved forward, raising its weapon. A red beam shot through the air. Daniel threw himself to the side, the energy searing past his shoulder. Dust exploded from the stone behind him. "Stay down," Daniel shouted over his shoulder. The woman fell flat, wrapping her body around her child like a shield. The boy's glowing blue eyes peeked from beneath her arms, wide with fear. Another shot rang out. Daniel rolled, his blade flashing with blue light as he slashed at the hunter's leg. Sparks flew. The creature staggered, letting out a metallic growl. Daniel's heart pounded. He was only one man, and there were many of them. But retreat meant death for the woman and her child. For several minutes, the ruins echoed with shouts, beams, and the clash of metal against stone. Daniel's movements were fast, desperate, survival guiding every strike. But he could not hold them off forever. Then, a small voice broke through the chaos. "Don't die. Please don't die." Daniel froze for a fraction of a second, glancing toward the child. The boy had crawled out from his mother's arms, his little hands shaking, but his eyes locked on Daniel. You can't leave us," the boy whispered. "You said you wouldn't." Daniel's chest tightened. He hadn't said it out loud, but in the boy's eyes, his choice had already been made. With renewed force, Daniel charged forward. He struck another hunter, his blade cutting deep into its side. Sparks burst, and the machine creature fell with a metallic scream. The remaining hunters hesitated. Their leader's red eyes narrowed, scanning Daniel with cold calculation. "Human, you fight well, but you cannot protect them forever." Daniel raised his blade, sweat dripping from his brow. "Watch me try." The hunters retreated slowly, their footsteps echoing as they disappeared back into the shadows. Their leader's voice lingered in the air. "We will return. She is marked. The child is ours." Silence fell. The ruins grew still again, broken only by the sound of Daniel's heavy breathing. The woman lifted her head, her eyes wide with shock. She had expected death, but instead she was alive. She turned to Daniel, her lips trembling. You fought for us." Daniel wiped dust from his face, sheathing his blade. "I couldn't just stand by." The child crawled forward, stumbling on his small legs until he reached Daniel. Without hesitation, he threw his little arms around the human's waist. "You are my father now," the boy whispered. "I know it. You saved us." Daniel froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked down at the boy, who clung to him as if he had always belonged there. The woman's eyes filled with tears. She opened her mouth to correct the child, but no words came. The sight of her son holding the human was too powerful, too real. Daniel gently rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I am not your father," he said softly, but the boy only looked up at him with glowing eyes. "Then why did you save us?" "Only fathers fight like that." Daniel had no answer. He glanced at the woman. She looked away quickly, shame and gratitude mixed on her face. Finally, Daniel spoke. "We can't stay here. Those hunters will return." The woman nodded, pulling her son close again. "They always return." Daniel frowned. "Then tell me everything. I need to know why they hunt you. I need to understand what I'm protecting." The woman hesitated, her body tense as if the truth itself was poison. But when she saw the boy clinging to Daniel, she let out a trembling sigh. "My people once lived free," she began softly. "We had our own world, our own homes. But then the hunters came. They destroyed our cities. They took our families. To them we are property." Her voice cracked. She looked down at her son, brushing his hair gently. "I escaped with him. But no one escapes forever. They track us always. That is why I begged you. Why I said those words. It was the only way I thought you would stay." Daniel's jaw tightened. He hated the fear in her eyes, the hopelessness in her voice. "You don't need to sell yourself for safety," he said firmly. "Not with me." The woman blinked, her silver tears falling silently. No one had ever said such words to her. For a moment there was peace. The child nestled between them, his small body finally relaxing. He smiled faintly, his innocence shining through the shadows. But peace never lasted long in this world. From the far side of the ruins came a sudden, sharp sound, a flare shooting into the sky. Red light burst above them, spreading like fire across the dark horizon. The woman gasped. "They have marked us. They call for reinforcements." Daniel looked up at the burning signal, his stomach sinking. He knew what it meant. The hunters would not come alone next time. He turned to the woman and child, his face hard with determination. "Then we move, now." The boy's hand slipped into his, small but steady. The woman followed close, her eyes full of silent trust she could no longer deny. As they disappeared into the ruins, the red flare burned above them, a warning to all. The hunt was far from over. The red flare still burned in the sky as Daniel led the woman and her child deeper into the ruins. The desert night had begun to fall, turning the world dark and cold. The ruins seemed endless, with broken towers and collapsed stone bridges casting long shadows. The boy's small hand clung to Daniel's fingers, refusing to let go. The woman walked close behind, her eyes darting to every sound. Each broken stone, each gust of wind felt like a threat. She had lived too long in fear to believe they were safe. Daniel stopped at a half-broken archway, scanning the path ahead. His instincts told him they were running out of time. The hunters would not let go so easily. The flare meant reinforcements. More enemies, stronger ones, maybe even machines he had never faced before. "We can't keep running blind," Daniel muttered. "We need cover, a place to hide until I understand what we're up against." The woman shook her head. "They will find us. They always find us." Her voice carried no hope, only certainty. Daniel looked at her sharply. "Not if I stop them first." The boy tugged at Daniel's arm. His glowing blue eyes looked up, innocent but worried. "Will you really stop them? Even if there are many?" Daniel crouched down, meeting the boy's gaze. He forced a small smile, though his heart was heavy. "I'll do everything I can. That's a promise." The boy nodded and held him tighter, as if that promise was already truth. They moved again, weaving through the ruins, until they found an old building half buried in the sand. Inside, shattered walls offered some shelter, though the roof had long ago collapsed. Daniel guided them in, checking corners, his hand always close to his weapon. "Rest here for a moment," he said. "I'll watch the entrance." The woman lowered herself to the ground, holding her son in her lap. Her tired eyes followed Daniel as he stood guard, his tall figure outlined against the broken doorway. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Why would a human fight for us? Why risk his life?" Daniel heard her but did not answer. He didn't have the words yet. The night deepened. Stars shone faintly through the broken roof. For a short time, silence returned, broken only by the boy's quiet breathing as he drifted into sleep. But peace never lasted. A sudden crack echoed in the distance. Then another. The sound of heavy footsteps on metal ground. Daniel's muscles tensed. He recognized the rhythm, pursuers. The woman's body stiffened. She pressed her child closer. "They are here," she whispered. Daniel raised his hand, signaling her to stay quiet. He crouched low by the doorway, eyes sharp. The sound grew closer. Figures moved in the dark, their glowing red eyes cutting through the shadows. This time there were more, 5, maybe 6 hunters. They scanned the ruins with weapons ready, their voices mechanical and cruel. Target marked. The female and child must be returned. Kill the human if he resists. Daniel's jaw tightened. They were not guessing. They already knew. He looked back at the woman. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. She mouthed the words, "Please don't die." Daniel gave a short nod. He stepped out into the open. The hunters froze for a moment, surprised by his boldness. Daniel's plasma knife hummed to life, glowing bright blue in the darkness. "You're not taking them," Daniel said coldly. The leader tilted its head, almost curious. "One human against many. You cannot win." Daniel tightened his grip. "Try me," the battle erupted. Red beams of energy tore through the ruins as Daniel dove for cover. His blade flashed, striking against metal armor. Sparks burst. The hunters moved with mechanical precision, surrounding him, their weapons firing in deadly bursts. Inside the shelter, the woman covered her child's eyes, but she could not silence his ears. The sound of battle filled the air, clashes, shouts, the crack of energy beams. The boy whimpered. "Mother, he will die. They will kill him." The woman's heart ached. She wanted to believe otherwise, but every scream of metal made her fear the worst. She pressed her forehead against her son's. "We must have faith. He fights for us now. We must believe." Outside, Daniel fought with every ounce of strength. He slashed at one hunter, cutting deep into its arm, sending it crashing into the sand. Another aimed at him from behind, but Daniel spun, throwing a piece of broken stone that smashed into its eye. The beam fired wide, searing a wall instead, but there were too many. His chest burned from running, his arms heavy from striking. Each breath came harder than the last. The leader advanced slowly, watching him with cold satisfaction. "You are strong, human. But strength is not enough. When you fall, the woman will beg, and we will take the child." Daniel staggered, his knife glowing weak in his grip. He could barely keep standing. Inside the shelter, the boy suddenly pulled away from his mother. His glowing blue eyes burned brighter than before. He ran toward the doorway, his small voice rising above the chaos. "Stop hurting him!" The sound cut through the battle like lightning. Every hunter froze. Even Daniel turned, shocked. The boy stood in the open, his little hands raised. The glow from his eyes spread brighter and brighter until it lit the ruins like a pale blue fire. The hunters hissed in unison. "The child!" "He awakens," the woman gasped, her hands covering her mouth. Daniel's eyes widened. He had no idea what power had just been revealed. The ruins trembled. Dust rained from the broken walls. The glow around the boy grew stronger, and the hunters stepped back, their mechanical voices sharp with alarm. "Capture him now, before it is too late." Daniel moved fast, grabbing the boy and pulling him close. But the glow did not fade. The boy's small body shook as if something deep inside him had been set free. Daniel looked back at the hunters. Their weapons raised again, fear mixed with hunger in their red eyes. And in that moment, Daniel realized, this child was not just innocent. He was something far greater, something worth more than life itself. The ruins glowed faint blue as the child's strange power flickered in the night. His little body trembled in Daniel's arms, his eyes shining like twin stars. The hunters had stepped back in fear, their mechanical voices filled with unease. "The child is awakening. His power must not be unleashed." Their leader signaled retreat. In perfect silence, the armored figures melted back into the shadows. Their red eyes vanished one by one, leaving only the desert wind and the heavy breathing of those who remained. Daniel tightened his grip around the boy, feeling the child's heartbeat race against his chest. Slowly the glow faded, until only faint blue light remained in his eyes. The boy went limp, exhausted. The woman rushed forward, her hands shaking as she touched her son's face. "You should not have done that," she whispered. "You're too young. It will break you." Daniel placed the boy gently into her arms. "What was that?" he asked, his voice steady but urgent. She held her son close, her silver tears sliding down her cheeks. "It is what they want. It is why they will never stop. He is not just a child. He is the last gift of my people." Daniel frowned, watching the boy's small chest rise and fall as he slept. "Gift?" The woman nodded. "Our children are born with power, but it takes years before it awakens. He awakened too early. That makes him rare and valuable. The hunters will kill entire villages just to take one child like him." Daniel's fist clenched. He had seen cruelty before, but this was something worse, turning children into prizes for war. The woman's voice shook. "Do you see now why I begged you? Why I offered myself in shame? I would have given anything to keep him safe." Daniel looked at her. She was no longer just a desperate mother. She was a warrior carrying unbearable pain. He realized then that she had already lost much more than he could imagine. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then Daniel spoke, his tone softer. "You don't need to beg anymore. As long as I breathe, no one will take him." Her eyes widened. She had not expected such words. Slowly, she lowered her gaze, whispering, "Why would a human show us such kindness?" Daniel had no answer. He simply looked at the boy asleep in her arms, his small hand still glowing faintly. Maybe it wasn't kindness. Maybe it was just the right thing. They left the ruins before dawn, moving quickly across the barren desert. Daniel guided them toward a canyon he remembered from his travels, a place with caves deep enough to hide. The journey was slow. The woman carried her son, and Daniel carried the burden of what was now his responsibility. By midday, the heat was harsh. They rested inside a cave, its cool shadows a blessing. Daniel built a small fire with broken scraps, heating a piece of dried ration. The boy stirred awake, his eyes opening weakly. He sat up, blinking at Daniel. "You're still here?" he said softly. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Of course I am." "Did you think I would leave?" The boy's lips curled into a tired smile. "Everyone leaves. But you didn't." Daniel's chest tightened at the words. He passed the boy a piece of food. "Eat. You'll need your strength." The boy ate slowly, his small hands trembling. The woman watched quietly, her eyes soft but full of worry. After a while, the boy leaned against Daniel's side, his head resting against the human's arm. Daniel froze, unsure how to respond. He had never been anyone's protector before, yet somehow it felt natural. The woman spoke softly, her voice echoing in the cave. "He already sees you as his father. You cannot change that." Daniel looked down at the boy, who had already drifted back into sleep against him. "I'm no father," he said quietly. She shook her head. "Father is not only the one who gives life, it is the one who saves it." Her words lingered in the silence. Daniel stared at the fire, wondering when his path had shifted. He had been a traveler, a man with no ties. But now, with every passing moment, he was becoming something more. As night fell, Daniel stood guard at the cave's mouth. The desert stretched endlessly under the stars. His thoughts were heavy. The hunters would return, and when they did, they would come in greater numbers. Behind him, the woman wrapped her child in her cloak. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to close her eyes without fear. She whispered into the darkness, "Maybe, just maybe, we are safe." Daniel heard her words. He wanted to believe them. But as he scanned the horizon, he saw movement, faint red lights flickering far away. The hunters were not done. He gripped his weapon tighter, determination burning in his chest. The bond between them was growing stronger. But so was the danger. And Daniel knew the next time they came, it would not be just hunters. It would be an army. The desert night was silent, but Daniel's eyes never left the horizon. From the mouth of the cave, he could see faint red lights moving in the distance. The hunters were regrouping. This time they would not come alone. Inside, the woman held her child close, whispering quiet songs of comfort. The boy slept lightly, his small hand glowing faintly against her chest. His power had revealed itself too soon, and now the entire wasteland would know. Daniel tightened his grip on his plasma knife. He had made a promise to protect them, but promises meant nothing against an army. The woman looked up, her voice low but steady. "You cannot fight them all. When they come, you must leave us. Save yourself." Daniel turned sharply, anger flashing in his eyes. "I told you already, I'm not leaving." "You don't understand," she insisted, her silver tears glowing in the firelight. "They will tear you apart. I would rather die than see my son taken. If one of us must be sacrificed, it should be me." Daniel shook his head. "That's not a choice I'll accept." The boy stirred at their voices, blinking awake. His blue eyes looked at Daniel with sleepy trust. "You promised you wouldn't leave," he whispered. Daniel knelt beside him, forcing a smile. "And I keep my promises." But deep inside, Daniel knew the truth. He couldn't fight forever. At some point, he would have to make a choice, stand and die with them or find a way to end the hunt for good. By dawn, the desert shook with the sound of engines. The hunters had returned, but not alone. This time, armored vehicles rolled across the sand, carrying more soldiers, more machines. Their leader's voice boomed through the air, cold and merciless. "Human, give us the woman and child and we will spare your life. Resist and all of you will perish." The woman clutched her son tighter. Her lips trembled, but she stayed silent. She already knew Daniel's answer. Daniel stepped out of the cave, his knife glowing bright. His voice cut through the wind. "You want them? You'll have to go through me." The hunters laughed, a metallic chorus that chilled the air. The battle began. Energy beams ripped across the sand as Daniel dove behind a rock. Sparks exploded. His blade clashed against metal, his arms straining with every strike. He fought with fury, every swing driven by the memory of the boy's words. "Are you my new father?" Inside the cave, the woman closed her eyes tight. Every scream of battle tore at her heart. She wanted to fight beside him, but her son's life bound her in place. The boy, however, refused to stay still. His small body shook, the blue glow in his eyes returning, stronger than before. "I can help him," he whispered. "No," his mother pleaded. "Your power is not ready. It will destroy you." But the boy's eyes filled with tears. "If I do nothing, he will die." He fights for us. I must fight too. Before she could stop him, the boy ran to the cave's entrance. His eyes burst into a radiant glow, brighter than before. The ruins lit up, the desert sky burning with blue light. The hunters staggered, their weapons flickering. Their leader shouted in alarm, "Capture him now! He is the key." Daniel turned, his heart sinking as he saw the boy glowing like a star. "No!" he shouted. "Get back!" But the boy stood tall, his little hands raised. Waves of energy rippled from him, striking the hunters and throwing them to the ground. The machines screeched, their armor cracking under the force. Daniel shielded his eyes, but even through the blinding light he could see the boy trembling. His small frame was too weak to hold so much power. The woman screamed, rushing forward. "You'll kill yourself!" She caught her son just as his legs buckled. The glow flickered, then dimmed, leaving the boy pale and weak in her arms. The hunters, though wounded, were not defeated. Their leader rose, its armor sparking but intact. It pointed at Daniel with burning red eyes. "You cannot protect him. His power will consume him. Hand him over, or all three of you die here." Daniel's chest heaved with exhaustion. He was bleeding, his arms heavy. He looked at the woman cradling her child. He looked at the boy who still clung to him with weak hands, whispering, "Please, don't leave us." In that moment, Daniel knew. There was no running, no hiding. The only way to save them was to make a final choice. He stood tall, raising his weapon one last time. His voice was steady, stronger than his body. "If you want him, you'll have to kill me first." The hunters closed in, weapons raised. The desert air shook with their advance. The woman cried out, holding her son tight. The boy reached out toward Daniel, his glowing eyes filled with tears. And then, just as the hunters prepared to strike, the ground beneath them began to tremble. A deep, thunderous sound rose from the earth as if the desert itself had awakened. The hunters hesitated, their red eyes flickering in confusion. Daniel froze, sweat dripping down his face. He didn't know what was coming, but he knew one thing. Whatever it was, it would decide everything. The desert shook violently, sand rising in waves as if the earth itself rejected the hunters. Cracks split the ground beneath their feet, glowing faint blue, the same glow as the boy's eyes. The hunters staggered, their red eyes flashing in confusion. "Impossible," their leader hissed. "The child cannot summon such power." Daniel shielded the woman and child, pulling them close against the rocks. He stared at the cracks spreading outward like veins of fire. "What's happening?" he asked. The woman's voice shook. "His awakening. It has called something older, something buried." The boy trembled in her arms, his eyes glowing brighter again. He was not controlling it. The power was flowing through him, wild and unchained. Suddenly, pillars of blue light burst upward from the cracks, throwing hunters into the air like leaves in a storm. Their armored bodies crashed against the ruins, sparks and metal raining down. Daniel gritted his teeth. This power will tear him apart. The woman clutched her son, silver tears burning her cheeks. If it does, at least he won't fall into their hands. Daniel's jaw tightened. No, he had fought too hard for them to give up now. The hunters regrouped, their leader slamming its clawed fist into the ground. Its voice boomed like thunder. "He is the weapon we seek. Secure him at any cost." They charged through the storm of light, weapons raised. Daniel stepped forward, plasma blade humming to life. His muscles ached, his body screamed for rest, but his will was iron. "You'll touch him over my dead body." The fight erupted again. Daniel's blade clashed with steel, sparks flying in the blinding blue light. He dodged beams, striking with raw desperation. Every move was fueled not by survival, but by something deeper. A bond he never thought he'd feel. Behind him, the woman cried out as the boy's glow intensified, his small body shaking. She tried to shield him, but the power was beyond her grasp. Daniel fought harder, carving through one hunter after another, but more kept coming. For every one he dropped, two more advanced. His chest burned, his breath ragged, yet still he refused to fall. The leader loomed before him, taller and stronger than the rest. Its red eyes burned like fire. With a swing of its massive blade, it knocked Daniel to the ground. His weapon flew from his hand, clattering into the sand. The leader raised its weapon for the final strike. "Die, human!" "Your defiance ends here." Daniel's vision blurred. His body screamed at him to surrender. But then he heard a weak voice. "Dad, get up," the boy. His small voice trembling but filled with trust. Daniel's heart roared back to life. He rolled aside just as the blade came down, searing the sand where his head had been. With every ounce of strength left, he lunged for his weapon, grabbing it and slashing upward in a desperate strike. The plasma blade cut through the leader's chest. Sparks burst, metal screeched, and the giant fell with a roar of fury. The other hunters froze. Their leader was down. Their voices turned to static, their red eyes dimming with hesitation. Daniel stood tall, blood dripping from his arm, but his blade still glowing. His voice was like steel. "You want him? Then come and die with him." The hunters hesitated, their ranks breaking. One by one, they began to retreat into the shadows, vanishing back into the desert. The last of them dragged their fallen leader, sparks trailing across the sand. The silence that followed was heavy. Only the crackling of blue light remained, slowly fading into the earth. Daniel dropped to his knees, exhaustion crashing over him. The woman rushed forward, kneeling beside him. Her silver eyes glistened. You saved us," he shook his head. "No, he saved us. I just stood long enough." The boy crawled into Daniel's arms, weak but smiling faintly. "I knew you wouldn't leave. You're my dad now." Daniel froze, his throat tight. He looked at the woman. She didn't correct the boy this time. Instead, she whispered softly, "Perhaps he is right. You fought harder than any father I have ever known." For a long moment, Daniel could not speak. The bond was no longer a question, it was truth. He had made his choice, and it had remade him. The woman lowered her head, her voice trembling. "At first I begged you to take us as concubines, to give us a place. But now, I see you gave us more. You gave us hope." She looked into his eyes. "Not concubine. Not slave. Let me be your wife. Let us be your family." Daniel stared at her, the weight of her words sinking deep. A strange warmth spread through his chest, stronger than fear, stronger than exhaustion. He pulled the boy closer, his free arm resting gently around the woman. For the first time in years, he spoke with absolute certainty. "You already are." The desert wind grew calm. The ruins stood silent again, as if the land itself approved. The hunters would return one day, Daniel knew that. But when they did, they would not face a desperate mother and child. They would face a family, and nothing in the galaxy was stronger than that.